It details my work in how I approach helping people get out of cults. Just from 74 to 76, I was a mid-level American leader, and I was rescued by my family after I almost died in a van crash due to sleep exhaustion. And when I got out of the Moonies, largely it was because I was taught about brainwashing and mind control, and it started to activate my critical thinking to understand what the group was all about. And then I started meeting ex-Scientologists, ex-Children of God members, ex-Krishnas, ex-Children of God, and I realized the ideologies were different, but the mechanisms of how they recruit and indoctrinate people are very, very similar. Sure, so I would start by saying that no one joins a destructive cult in my experience of 36 years. They're deceived, so there's lack of informed consent. Often recruited by an attractive member of the opposite sex, or if you're gay, an attractive member of the same sex, or a coworker or a friend or relative. And essentially there's control of behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions into an authoritarian pyramid structure. And a new cult identity is created that suppresses a person's real identity. And through a series of behavioral techniques and hypnotic techniques and thought-stopping techniques and installation of phobias, people are made into obedient, dependent identities, what we call clones of the leadership. You know, because a lot of people say people join cults, but my experience is that they're deceptively recruited into a destructive cult where they don't know what the group really believes, they don't understand what is going to happen to them when they get involved. It's an incremental, step-by-step manipulation of their thoughts, their feelings, their information, and ultimately their behavior until the point of a totalistic split in their identity. They have their cult self and their real self that suppresses the real self. And this cult self is a mirror of the cult leader, so that you think the right way, feel the right way, act the right way, and you receive orders and do what you're told. However, the spirit wants to be free, doesn't like to be lied to and exploited, and so there's always leakage and doubts that are happening. And my approach is dependent really on educating family members, friends, ex-members to create a network of informed people who can then creatively and strategically influence the person in an ethical way to start thinking about what am I doing and what are they really you know, what are their claims and where's the proof, and to educate them in the case of Scientology with information, for example, with John Atak's book, A Piece of Blue Sky, which I think is the single best book on the subject. The symptoms are rather, I mean, if you go through the checklist, if you're having intrusive thoughts, if you're having nightmares, if you're having heavy startle reactions, it's kind of easy to name that, but what the problem is most mental health professionals aren't trained to deal with people involved with mind control and cult problems, and they often will do medication, which in the case of people coming out of Scientology, they've already been programmed with phobias against trusting mental health professionals of any kind, told that they're going to be drugged and electroshocked and lobotomized. So they're afraid that, and what happens is if they do seek help, if they're brought into an emergency room, the first course of treatment is give them drugs, which just reinforces the programming. So I've been doing trainings for psychiatric residents to try to help them at least be aware enough to ask, hey, were you ever involved with a high demand group of any kind, or a group that had any specific teachings against mental health professionals or the medical industry? So the very common presentation of symptoms is depression, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, eating disorder, sexual dysfunction, nightmares, problems decision-making, what we call a dissociative phenomenon where people are spacing out or having these intrusive memories where they're back in the group, thinking that they should be doing what they had been instructed in the group. And my approach is basically to tell people the way to recover from destructive mind control is to learn to control your own mind, which means understand how it works. People in groups like Scientology, they're working off of a model that Hubbard wrote about in the 50s, many of which those things that he stole have been debunked, such as you need to re-experience a trauma over and over again in order to be cured of it. What happens when you re-experience a trauma over and over again is you basically re-traumatize yourself to the point of being numb. It doesn't help you get over the trauma at all. So there are much better techniques in the 21st century for getting over traumatic experiences. And one of the confounding problems with people in Scientology is Hubbard claimed that he was dehypnotizing people when in fact his whole system is based on using hypnotic techniques. And so when I ask ex-Scientologists what was your best experience in Scientology, they almost always say the communications course, the TRs, which is teaching hypnotic techniques and obedience in a hypnotic trance state. And so when I explain what is hypnosis, that Hubbard was a stage hypnotist, in fact, John Atek wrote a whole piece about never believe a hypnotist in terms of responding. That was Hubbard's words, never trust a hypnotist. It helps them have an idea of how the mind works, and then I give them tools to fix themselves, basically. And one of the keys is helping people understand that if they understood mind control at the beginning, and if they knew what the beliefs of the group were in the beginning, they never would have said yes. Because nobody knowingly wants to be abused and exploited at all, in my experience. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. I fly all over the world, and people fly to Boston to work with me. So I help people recover from the effects, and I also advise family and friends who are trying to rescue a loved one in a cult strategically how to best approach their loved one. And I don't believe in a cookie-cutter approach. I think every case has to be evaluated individually. Because we're individuals, and ultimately the goal is to empower the person to think for themselves and make their own decisions, not rescue them and make them leave, but to treat them with respect. Is that when you're in a mind control cult, you think your group is the greatest group on earth. There are other groups that are cults, just not yours. So the Achilles heel is educating people about other groups first. And explaining the BITE model, behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control, and seeing it in Heaven's Gate, seeing it in Jonestown, seeing it in the Moonies, and then asking the person, tell me, how is your group different?